welcome everyone. Um, so this is round two of kind of the reintroduction, the reorientation, maybe even the reinvigoration of the OpGov effort. Um, so when we were chatting last week, um, basically I think the effort was to do somewhat of a post-mortem to start looking back at all the work that had been done in prior milestones and the like. So hopefully you all had been able to undertake some of that. It was supposed to be done in parallel with a data management project that James had kind of started, but had fallen. James kind of fallen off the radar a little bit, so need to extract him and find him. But if you click open the wiki and just look at all the open pages that we happen to have, there are thousands of them. So this may be a little bit of a harder exercise than initially expected, but I think there's still some value there, which is for us to collectively go through the links and create an OpenGov homepage within the Wiki network that will provide easy access to all this documentation. Because I think as Bushram has kind of DM'd me and others, there are, he's got an idea, a good idea that's been executed and vetted. So it's not necessarily to minimize that, but it'd be easy to say, hey, that idea started here, who owned it, and it kind of it's evolved to this point. And right now that's still very hard for us to do, just because the way the OpGov is set up within the wiki. So I'd like for us to continue that process. What I'm going to do tomorrow is set up a homepage in the wiki and start creating and start moving content over. Basically, it should be a link, small descriptor, and then we'll kind of organize them under headings. So I'll create some instructions on how to do that, and then as all of us kind of go back in through the wiki network, we'll be able to find and collectively organize all the documentation we need for OpGov. So it's not, it'll help us get reorganized, reoriented, kind of focused in on some of our drivers, but it'll also then create a good collective repository of information that we can point to hires and newbies who are going to join the organization. It's also going to help because we had our leadership board called yesterday, and the prevailing sentiment there, for those that didn't check out the YouTube video, was basically to start the process of defining the scope and the extent of what the leadership board's going to do. And I think if Allison has a moment, I'd like to hand that over to her, because part of the initiative for the leadership board is to start identifying some of our operational imperatives, do a little bit of surveying of the cohort, get a good understanding of what some of our challenges are, et cetera, et cetera. Many of those things will dovetail nicely with what we're going to do on the OpGov space. So Al, do you have a sec to maybe share a little bit about what the ops side of OpGov is going to look like? You're still on mute, Al.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about in the leadership board meeting last night, which isn't necessarily under the purview of the leadership board specifically, but came up in conversation that I wanted to address, was some of the operational challenges that we have had over the last 6 months since we started out. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough. And so what we're going to be doing in the next week or so is to start to collect information from folks just on a personal basis, anonymous basis, whatever you're comfortable with, to see just from a functional operational standpoint, what have been some of the most challenging aspects of participating so far on the research side. You know, are there tools that you might need? Were there specific kinds of situations that were more challenging than others? Some of the things that have come up in the past are, we've all discussed previously, is how to find information, how to leave for a period of time, whether it's a matter of 2 days, which as we approach paper time is a long time, as we all know, or 2 months, which at certain times, is just the natural rhythm of life, and trying to figure out, when you do come back, how do you come back? How do you get caught up? Where do you go? How do you find things? Other times it's been different kinds of process that folks have been challenged with. Some of the things for me is, I know my areas of interest are more about there's a certain amount of attrition that is natural in these types of projects, but have we lost people along the way that if we could have done something differently, they may not have left? Or are there things that are causing fatigue for different people? So, my short list of things that I am interested in, just to kind of get the thoughts flowing, is, project planning, attrition, recruitment strategies as far as researchers go, tools, are there processes or rules that we could put in place that could be helpful as far as moving research forward, on the grander scale. Some things that I know we've talked a lot about but haven't necessarily come to conclusion on are, mission statements and things of that ilk. So again, it's not leadership board specifically, but it is operations. And so since we're talking operations and OpGov, just to kind of let you know some of what my thoughts were. So I think that's kind of the sum of my thoughts at this point. Treywood, did you want to continue that, or?
Yeah, the dynamic that Al's referring to, I think, is critical to some of the cultural components of Demo. And as we begin to evolve and mature, and Rajan, who's going to be graduating soon, is taken on, and we'll be writing a big meta paper on Demo. It'll allow us to start assuming responsibility over some of those things that I think the things that Al is going to be working on or helping us collaborate on are like mission critical to the next iteration of what Demo is. And that's still something we're, as a collective, should have some input in deciding, be it a mission statement, what is our work structure. So, and a lot of these questions, a lot of these themes we engaged many months ago, made some progress, but then we kind of got preoccupied either with a WISP paper or a chart paper. So, so I think to go back into the archives and take a look at some of the ideas that were presented or emerged around some of these debate points should be helpful in us kind of reconnecting with our roots and then moving forward as next steps. So, Al had, I think had some very candid and some frank points when she was talking about the operations side. Anyone else have some candor they want to share with regards to some of these operational initiatives? If this isn't the forum, then certainly reach on out to Al. Obviously discretion is key, as is anonymity. And you can expect Al to be very respectful of both. But I think it's important that we get, if folks do have issues, to please quit sharing them, so we can start making some informed decisions about it. things, the other platforms. Angela, you've
Got a
unmuted.
quick,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry, I couldn't hear kind of the last bit of what you were saying. I'm not sure because my children are all chomping up the bandwidth or if, or what. But anyway, I was just thinking, like, because there's a lot of different kind of categories of things that we can work on, like the kind of problems we can work on solving related to kind of policy, operations, all of these different things. Might it be worth starting like, I mean, there's probably some people who would like to stay anonymous in kind of their giving their suggestions, but for whoever who's interested in kind of just collaborating and contributing, maybe we could just start kind of a Google Doc that has themes, kind of the different areas that we want to work on improving, and just kind of have it as a brainstorming doc that people can just add to. And they could add to anonymously. They just, you know, just have a category and then the list of issues, and then we can kind of identify what leadership, well, the leadership board can have a look at it and see what they want to do with it, and kind of go from there. But yeah, I think having kind of Al's open ear for whoever doesn't want to contribute publicly is a great idea. Thanks. Are you there?
Sorry, I just wanted to mention, as I said earlier, that it's not, it's something that came up in the leadership board meeting, but is not a leadership board issue specifically. It's more just a way that, you know, Michael and Rajan and everyone at Stanford does a lot of administrative work on the project in general. And so it's a way for us to kind of provide feedback and sort of help them and be supportive of those administrative operational efforts.
Yeah, I suppose in trying to unpick what might be kind of a platform thing that we all work on together and unpick which bits might be things that leadership board wants to take forward. And kind of things like identifying what policy we need to start thinking about, like, well, not policy, strategy, I suppose, like kind of long-term, you know, five-year strategic plan or a communication strategy or I don't know, confidentiality agreements or, you know, all these different things, I suppose, will come out of this kind of brainstorming of what the issues maybe are. Things we're doing well, there's also lots of things we're doing well, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And those are getting a lot of play. But I think, you know, organizations tend to, they know what they know what they don't know. That if we can be transparent with some of the dark, smoky backroom kind of thing, that's also nice. But if we could you know, identify some of the areas where we're not as strong, I think, Angela, I think that's another good form is to have a Google Doc that you know, we just start throwing out some ideas. You know, minimum wage, universal minimum wage was a pretty big topic for a while. And that is that's a hefty idea that is going to require a lot of bandwidth to get to the bottom of. You know, profit versus non-profit. Should we an H1C? There's a variety of different forms that we can take as an organization. What is our mission? You know, should we have a mission statement? And then all that dovetails into communication strategy, social media. We'll have another hangout with regards to marketing and social media on Saturday. But there's a lot of these ideas that are very much intertwined that you know, that are operational, that are governance, or a little bit of everything. So there's still the governance. The leadership board is certainly one of the institutional pieces of that. And Jay Silver has contributed greatly to how it should look. But as we start to onboard new workers and new requesters, have we thought through the scale? Have we thought through the scope of leadership for that? As Al mentioned, some of the rules, some of the responsibility, the onboarding, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I think Angela mentioned many moons ago about professional development and internal learnings and the like. So I think there's a ton of stuff we could do. And part of it's going to be shaped by, all right, let's prioritize, let's look at the big list, and then, you know, kind of separate out the well, so to speak. Okay. Oh, well, Mohammed asks if we have a leadership board, what's going to be the role of this OpGov? Mohammed, the OpGov we have right now is maybe it's a committee. I mean, organizationally, you can look at us in any way, but I think we're maybe a collective conscience. Maybe we are, we're just taking on some of the heavy lifting of a lot of the procedural things that need to take place. Some of these will probably could be assumed by the leadership board. That's still a work in progress, but regardless of where all this stuff ends up, if we're moving towards a crowd-owned, crowd-managed, crowd-represented marketplace, then these are things that we need to handle our own business. And so right now we are the builders of the platform, but as we take on workers and requesters, we then become leaders within the platform. We become, we'll take on this, we'll all take on roles, and so I think it's important that we populate the culture with this. Hey, we're going to take care of our own business right now, and this is part of that process. So hopefully it leaves a cultural imprint within Damo that we're self-regulating, we're self-aware, self-conscious, and we're making good decisions. So I think that's where it goes. Now, if you have some other ideas, either from a procedural or an institutional perspective, you're not shy. Please share. So has anyone done any deep diving into some of the old milestones and some of the old wikis and found some cool things or some ideas or concepts that they'd like to percolate? Because if not, then I think Angela's idea of putting together a Google Doc and start circulating that and using that as a depository for ideas. I think maybe to make it user friendly. And Angela, do you have a little bandwidth to maybe just structure out one that has Google Doc that has some very high arching themes on them?
Sure,
should we do Google Doc or do we want to do a wiki page? Okay, I've just been informed that Al's is building a Google Doc as we speak. So
good. Well done.
That with the group, and we'll take it from there.
Cool. Another quick question, actually. If we, maybe this is one for the leadership board, but whatever kind of system we decide on or is decided on for how people kind of share their ideas or vote within this system, I'm just wondering, will it need buildings? I mean, we've talked about all sorts of different ideas for people, workers and requesters sharing their voice and voting on things and how this might work, what kind of mechanisms we'd have in place to get people. Oh, sorry, 1 second, lunch is ready. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, we'll wait for Angela to come back. Anyone else have any points that they want to raise while we wait for Angela? Lucia, you were talking earlier about weighted democracy and its impact on the leadership board. Do we want to talk a little bit more about that in detail in this forum?
Okay. When I looked in the milestones, there was, I guess, an experiment about different kinds of organizational models, and the weighted democracy was tested in for upvoting ideas and so on. But my idea is, what if we implement weighted democracy for choosing the leadership board itself? I think we can give a shot for this to test this approach, because
so what's
not everyone has
what's the incentive then for having a weighted democracy? And is your weight going to be merely on tenure? Or is it going to be about participation? What would be the components that would weight the vote?
Yeah, one of these components might be the reputation from, whatever reputation system we use. Okay,
Yep.
and we can brainstorm other weights. So this is an open kind of thinking to know what metrics we should start to think about and use in this regard. But the main idea is use weighted upvote for people who are in the leadership board in a weighted way. This is my idea.
Mm-hmm. So why do you want to tie it then to as opposed to one person, one vote? What do you hope to accomplish by having such a system?
My idea is based on that, on the fact that not everybody in this system is equal. There is workers who work very much, and there is some few people who are new in the system, and you cannot treat them like they have equal weight in the system. I hope you get my idea.
One of the things that we did when we did the voting over the summertime for the leadership board, for example, is that we set a minimum participation threshold. The way Rajan did it in that instance was anyone who had been participating in the Slack within the recent period of time was allocated a voting option. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to address weight, but that was one of the things that we had used in this particular instance. It's the same thing we did with the authorship on both papers. The first was, I think they were similar in that the first one you had a minimum of 5 bonuses, and excuse me, and in the recent one, there was a minimum page rank threshold. So once you met the threshold for participation, from there everyone had a one person, one vote weight.
So you mean everyone above this threshold? Whenever you are above this threshold, there is one person on one.
Yeah. So there's a minimum. It's just the way that we've done it so far. Yeah. I mean.
Okay. Have you? I'm talking about trying to test what you're saying versus if we use the weight in the page rank, for example, for upvoting report. Can we do that, or it's
we used page ranking during the experimentation that we did at the beginning of the summer. One of the things that concerns me about that is that, obviously it's all going to depend on the math that is going to determine page rank. Obviously, we'll have a different mechanism of some kind. We just have to be very mindful, because that particular system, you create a situation sometimes where it takes very few people to outweigh many people. There's often like a log relationship between weight and participation, and so you kind of have to be very, just from a statistics and math perspective, you have to be very mindful of what that distribution is, because if you have folks who are either excuse me, relatively new, or how many people does it take to outweigh the top person? Like, what's the maximum difference between the smallest weight and the greatest weight, and how do you grade that out? So I'm not saying I have an answer. I'm just saying, when we get past one person, one vote, it becomes a very complex mathematical challenge to figure out how do we create equity within the system.
Okay, so you mean you're talking about complexity of controlling the weighting.
Yes, and also just whenever,
but
as Michael's always said, the more complex the math is, the shadier people interpret it to be. Whenever when people are talking about different kinds of scoring and weighting, the more complex it is, the harder it is for people to understand, and the less likely people are to trust it.
Okay.
I'm not saying there isn't something to be said. I'm just saying you have to be very careful of what the greatest difference is between the highest weight and the lowest weight, and what the social implication of that might be.
Yes. So there is a trade-off between the simplicity of whatever math model used to determine weights and how much people would trust that.
Yeah, I mean, and also
I understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying also. I mean, there's no right answer. I mean, we've taken, for example, even just in our approach to ranks within our authorship, right?
Yeah.
We've had very transparent systems in both situations, and in both situations, there were people who felt that the outcome was not necessarily reflective. Excuse me, or not necessarily fair, and so it's not impossible. It's just very tricky, very delicate business, I would say.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we should address the disadvantage of equal voting and disadvantage of weighted voting, and see what has more disadvantage to.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
we can definitely look at it. I mean, it's worth going back and reading through some of the results that we had when we tested out weighted democracy before. One of the challenges that can come up with weighted democracy is that if people have a lower weight, they feel like their vote doesn't matter, and so you end up getting more participation from fewer people, which makes that weight exponentially more powerful.
yeah.
So, and I don't know. I think in my experience, from what we discovered this summer, and Trigva or anyone here, let me know if you disagree. I feel like people felt that if they're going to be able to vote, then they should be equal, which is why weighted democracy just didn't get a lot of love in the survey. I mean, we can go back through and pull out the documentation on the results from that, but I'm pretty sure that I thought weighted democracy came in third place.
Yeah.
After representative, which was the elected leadership board, and I think second was full open, and then weighted. But I don't recall. Does anybody else recall?
Weighted did not do very well.
Yeah.
I think weighted was worse, but I think there might be something in the fact too that people were feeling a bit fatigued by the third week. So I wonder if they were in different orders, what the results might be. I don't know.
I mean, how do you feel about weighted democracy, Angela?
Sorry, the other pizzas are ready now. 1 second.
No worries.
Give me a second.
What do you think, Trigva, on weighted?
I think you for the biggest challenge is the disproportion. I am a big fan of just one person, one vote. Yeah, I understand that there are some issues of tenure. There are some issues of experience and experiences. There's just something almost undemocratic about a weighted model that just because you've been here well, not just, I mean, you've been within the system for a while. That's awesome. But should your reward for that be greater influence over your peers? That this doesn't strike me as the cultural components we're trying to create. Um, that the influence should be not through your vote, but being able to convert your experience and your experiences into learning moments, to be able to share your ideas with others, and through the power of that idea and the power of your persuasion, be to get others to follow.
Okay.
That for me, I think, is a much more empowering dynamic than saying, hey, you know, Angela's been here for 12 years and her vote counts 12 times as much as the new person that comes in. That just kind of rubs me wrong, because there's no incentive to
Yeah, but if you look at from other point of view, the more person involved in the system, the more he's affected by its changes. You know, so
as Al mentioned, I think there are many sides here. But that person that is affected by it, instead of having them compelled by a vote, should be then compelled to act.
Okay, I get you.
Okay. Because voting is, what is voting? You know, it's a binary action, yes or no. And it doesn't compel people to participate or to engage beyond that act. And what we're trying to encourage is that voting is a participatory process. It's part of your total engagement and your commitment to the collective. So it's very old school in that it ties, you know, your vote isn't tied necessarily to an agenda, but your vote is tied to the ideas that hold the community together. So that's,
I agree.
so that's kind of my thought on weighted democracy. But you know, I think Angela is correct in that the drop off, because I think, if I recall correctly, Al, that weighted democracy was the third field experiment. That was a tremendous amount of drop off. So fatigue may very well have set in, but I also think, as we were kind of spitballing it, the complications of the thing, because we didn't have a reputation system in play, there wasn't a whole lot of distinction between the cohorts when we were doing it. It was like there was the folks that started in the spring, and then summer, I think we were only like a month into it. So there was the distinction between the groups as far as tenure went was minimal, as was, you know, the experience and experiences within the cohort. We didn't have a reputation system, so you know, maybe now that we've matured and there's a little more, you know, a little more meat on the bones, and that we have a reputation system, let's give it a shot. I mean, if we're going to run and consider running field experiments, which is something that I would like for us to really consider in light of the conference that is going to be, you know, CSCW, it's 3 to 6 months out. That if we're going to do field work, at least in the social sciences, you know, our user group may not be very huge, but what we can do is we can run them through repetitions, and so we can get some sample sizes that will allow us to maybe even make some claims or validate some assertions. And so maybe weighted democracy, which if you look at a lot of the research in the Operation Gov world, really isn't seen as an effective tool. Maybe it is maybe it's something interesting to throw out there if we tie it to reputation. I Again, I got no qualms trying some stuff out. I think that's what's been missing from the cohort is a little adventurous research. Instead of just validating a hypothesis, maybe we should go and throw ourselves out there a little bit and throw some claims and see if we can make some commentary on crowdsourcing in general. Some of the meta themes that that for me are very interesting. I've been talking way too long, so Angela, I know you were. Did you at least have a slice of pizza?
Yeah. Well, no, I've been making pizza. I'd pass it round if you were here.
All right. So, let me drop off. Just a second. Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to drop in one thing. I know not everyone who's here was involved in the OpGov experiments over the summertime, so I just wanted to clarify, because I got DM'd a question, that what we're talking about when we're talking about weighted democracy, and Husham, let me know if this isn't what you mean. There's the question of, do we have weighted democracy? Originally, we looked at weighted democracy as opposed to the leadership board, so one or the other. And I think the hybrid model that some is offering up now is using weighted democracy to determine the members of the leadership board. So you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but the original was looking at either or, and I think now we're looking at a combination of the two. So right now we don't we don't have anything that's weighted except for authorship. But just to clarify for those who weren't here for that over the summer.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Mommy, I want some pizza.
Usually it's our kids coming into the call saying, Mommy.
So I think, you're talking about participation and contribution. I think some of the maybe the research issues that we should spin off that are, I think, tied directly to this. Al has been mentioning PageRank, which is a measure of influence. How do we measure influence versus contribution? You were talking about pulling from the reputation system, and that's good for workers and requesters, but for the rest of us who aren't maybe subject to or will be utilizing the reputation system, the question then becomes, do you weight us based on influence or on contribution? And so I'm not holding your feet to the fire on that, but if we're going to use weighted democracy, then perhaps we should investigate that dynamic in addition.
I think, and then if you're talking about contribution, what is a measure of contribution? Keeping, one second.
So that's kind of my point,
I will, we have the results from this summer, and while we admittedly had a relatively small sample size, I mean, when we look through, we asked a number of questions, everything from, of the three approaches, which had the timeliest outbound communications, which had the most engaging communications, which, one interesting one is, which approach was most receptive or responsive to your needs and ideas. And leadership board came in first, participatory democracy was second, and weighted democracy was a far third. And what was most interesting to me, it says, which approach did you trust the most to make leadership decisions? And the leadership board option took it away. and also the critical one for us, which was, in which approach did you feel the most comfortable? Leadership board also, you know, kind of took the cake in many of the areas. It's called survey results. Let me see if I can repin it to the Slack for everybody. As Trygve said, I think, part of it is it's kind of where we were at the time, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where we need to stay, but just to give everyone a good historical perspective, that's just kind of where we were. I'm going to share this on the OpGov channel just for reference. So as I said, those who weren't around this summer can take a look. That's it. Doesn't look like it came up. I will try and get the link up. Again, with all of these questions, what we really need to do, as we always do, one of the things that Michael Bernstein was talking about in the leadership board last night is that we don't have any intentions to recruit more people until we actually have our soft launch, and we have some thresholds for that that we need to meet. So one of the things we want to do at this time is look at the core of the participants that we have, look at some of these opportunities of what we need to do, look at the overall project plan, and then just sort of set our priorities in a way that makes sense. There's some critical must-haves, and then there are some nice-to-haves, and we just have to, sift through together which of these things are foundational at this point to continue moving forward.
Quick question. When you talk about recruitment, do you mean recruiting other researchers to join the project, or do you mean recruiting people to pay people to build the platform and maintain the platform?
Workers or requesters?
Sorry, I missed that.
The idea is to start recruiting in workers, requesters, and platform folks. I think it's a combination of all three.
Right. You're not talking about hiring people to work on the platform. That's not what you mean then?
Well, we're shying away from hiring because that would imply compensation.
Good. That's good, because it was just raising alarm bells when I heard recruitment. I thought it meant that we're trying to get somebody on a payroll to build a platform or something, and then I thought, oh, we don't have any money yet. So I was just yeah, good to hear. That's all good.
We're going to use recruitment in the most benign way, form, or fashion, which is basically to attract people to the platform. So we're about 45 minutes into all this. I think Al's sharing a lot of content. So let's do a couple things in parallel. Keep digging through the archives. Now that there is that Google Doc, start putting ideas on there. We'll start advertising that out. We'll get folks to start collecting concerns, issues, themes, and the like, positive and negative. Research things they want to discuss, or tools or techniques, and then as we find some points of critical mass, what we'll do is we'll convene again. Maybe early next week, we'll start assigning DRIs to lead either research or to investigate further, work in conjunction with the leadership board. There's a lot of things going to be happening in parallel. But as I mentioned, I think yesterday or the last time we met, all this stuff needs to get done. So there's going to be little in the way of wasted effort. It's just a matter of timing and prioritization. So so some of the goals of this is to we've got a lot to do. Let's share the wealth. Let's have a lot of folks DRI things that are close to near and dear to their heart. Let's work on coordinating them. So people are going to probably want to work on multiple different things simultaneously. So let's coordinate so we're not crushing people. And let's start tackling some of the big issues at hand, be them research, operational, or governance. And let's start moving the needle on some stuff. So it's kind of easier said than done, but I think that Google Doc should start collating ideas and start creating some critical mass for us.
Sounds good.
Okay, so spread the word. If you have questions or concerns, reach on out to Al. Yeah, she's going to be surveying, she's going to be collecting stuff, but chat with her a little bit. I think that'll help in many shapes, forms, and fashions. Like Cusham, you have ideas, throw them out there. Okay. If I don't engage them, or Al, Angela, someone else will, and let's start thinking. So there's no, Cusham, your idea was new. It's a new old idea, but it gives an opportunity to maybe reflect. The timing may be better now for embracing some of these ideas. So please don't be shy, everyone. Throw them on out there. We will be I think everyone is generally respectful and curious about the ideas that we're engaging in. So keep throwing them out there, and let's see if we either resurrect some old ideas or modify them a little bit. Al, any other thoughts before we shut down?
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming, and especially some of the newer faces from the summer, or those of you who have been away and are now back. Just wanted to thank everybody for coming out. It's an exciting time. Admittedly, it is nice to be on the other side of the paper, so we can give back to the business of building things. But yeah, I love the ideas. I love the questions. It's nice to be back at a point where we can bring some really good quality debate and discussion. For the record, just so that you know, when I'm providing a lot of historical information, it's not to necessarily shut down the conversation as much as it is to kind of catch everybody up on which discussions we have had. Not to say no, but to start from a place where we can take it and move it forward. So, for example, excuse me, the weighted democracy and leadership board combination isn't something that we looked at specifically. So, it's more just to inform, just for the record. And yeah, if there's something, if you don't necessarily have to talk to me about stuff. The survey will be coming out. There are various anonymous options to share some of the challenges that you've had. Additionally, you are always more than welcome to speak to Michael or Rajan or Geza or whomever on the Stanford side that can be of help. The most important thing really is for us to just help them as much as we can kind of take on some of these operational things, because we're a big crew and we're getting bigger all the time, so that workload is just continuing to grow for them. So we just want to help move some of that forward. And that's about it for me. Anybody else?
No, just to say well done, everyone. I mean, it's hard to believe that kind of all this started way back. I mean, it's quite a long time ago now. And we're all kind of still chugging away, so well done. Have I lost you?
Oh, we're here. We hear you. We hear you. We're just giving everybody a chance to speak.
Yes, kudos all around everyone. So, I think the next iteration, while there are still some technical steps that need to be applied to the platform, I think let's kind of create some momentum. And then we can start moving on to some things. I clearly think this group, as we start tackling some of the operational procedural things, that's a good segue into next iteration for Boomerang prototyping. I think once we start getting re-engaged into the guts of the platform, it's a good springboard to tackling some of the more technical or some of the more procedural. So I think this is a win-win all around. So don't be shy about the Google Doc. Keep an eye on some themes or things that you want to be a DRI on. Look at experimental field studies or pressing research ideas that we want to stress, and just throw it all out there. So the more the merrier. If you like to fix your name to an idea, that's awesome as well. Or if you just want to be anonymous, got no qualms there. So let's start that process. Bernstein's going to chat with us on Saturday. We're going to do a social media hangout on Sunday. I think based on progress of what we get on the Google Doc and what comes out of our Saturday conversation, let's look maybe for a Tuesday connection or Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, and we'll start moving the needle on stuff. All right. So with that, thank you everyone for the time, the effort, for hanging out and chilling with us. Go eat pizza. Have fun. All right, we're gonna shut this down, everyone. So thank you much again. We'll look forward to chatting to you all sooner rather than later.
And then the only other thing is to thank Trygve for carrying the OpGov torch for the last how many months, our steadfast leader over here. So just thank you to you as well.
Well done.
Okay, thanks all, and see you.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.